Three men with guns, two bodies in the dust, one Apache woman worth dying for. That's how it started in Los Reyes, New Mexico territory on a spring morning in 1876. By sundown, I'd made an enemy who'd hunt me across three territories. By week's end, I'd faced the one truth I'd been running from for 5 years. My name is Gideon Ashford. They called me Iron during the war, not for strength, but for the coldness in my eyes when I pulled a trigger. 11 years since Appomattox. 11 years since I thought the killing was done. I was wrong. The boarding house in Los Reyes smelled of stale whiskey and failure. I'd come to collect payment for a freight run, simple work that didn't require a Winchester, the kind that let a man sleep. Halfway down the narrow hallway, I heard it, a woman's voice muffled. Not crying. Beyond that, the sound of someone who'd forgotten what tears were for. The door at the end stood warped and cracked. No lock. I pushed it open. She crouched in the corner of a room, no bigger than a horse stall. Apache, maybe 24, with black hair tangled and damp. She wore only a torn linen shift, the fabric clinging in the humid air. But her eyes stopped me cold, dark, burning, not with fear, with fury so pure it could cut steel. "You've seen me dishonored," she said, each word deliberate as a hammer strike. "Apache law says a man who sees a woman unclothed must marry her, or both will be killed by the tribe." I'd scouted 4 years in Apache country. I knew the law. I also knew what she wasn't saying. "There's no tribe left to enforce it," I replied quietly. Her jaw tightened. "But Silas Maddox doesn't know that. And if you want us both to live past sunset, you'll make him believe it's true." Silas Maddox. The name hit like a fist. Captain Silas Maddox, 3rd Virginia, Confederate Army. A man who'd survived Gettysburg by abandoning his platoon to die. I'd served with him. I knew what he was. "Who are you?" I asked. "Nalin." Her eyes flicked past me to the hallway. "And you're cavalry. I can see it in how you check corners before entering rooms." Footsteps thundered outside. Heavy boots. The scrape of spurs. A voice thick with rage. "Time's up." I shrugged out of my trail coat and held it to her. "We're leaving. Now." She took it without hesitation, pulling it over her shoulders as the door exploded inward. Silas Maddox filled the frame, 51 years old, a scar from eyebrow to jaw, gray hair slicked back. Behind him, two men, Mordecai the Raven Cross in black with a silver colt, and a younger outlaw with nervous eyes. "Major Ashford," Silas drawled. "Playing hero again?" "Captain Maddox," I said. "Still running from your sins?" His smile showed teeth. "The girl's mine. Paid $200, that makes her property. She's a person. And you're in my way." His hand drifted toward his Remington. "Last chance. Walk away or die here." I grabbed the chair, swung it hard into the door frame, wood splintering, buying seconds. My Bowie knife pried the nailed window open. Nalin went through first, dropping into the alley. I followed. Behind us, Silas roared, "Stop them!" We ran. My wagon waited at the end of the alley. A modified Conestoga with 4 horses and my Morgan gelding, ironclad, tied to the back. I lifted Nalin into the bed, grabbed the reins. A gunshot cracked the morning. The bullet hit the water barrel. I didn't slow. One whistle and the team surged forward. We tore through town, mud flying from the wheels. By the time Silas reached his horses, we had 200 yards. By the time he got mounted, we turned onto the northern trail. But I knew the truth. He wouldn't stop. Men like Silas never did. 2 miles out, I slowed the horses and climbed into the wagon bed. Nalin sat on a canvas bundle, my coat wrapped around her, hair falling across her face. "Why risk this?" she asked. The answer wasn't simple. Because I've caused enough Apache women to suffer. Won't cause one more. Her eyes narrowed. You were cavalry. Which campaigns? Red River, Palo Duro Canyon. I paused. Bear Creek. Something flickered in her expression. Bear Creek. Winter of '71. Captain Morrison's raid. My chest tightened. You know it? My village was 20 miles south. We heard the guns for hours. Found survivors 3 days later. She watched me carefully. They described the scout who led the soldiers. White man in a red bandana. I said nothing. The bandana sat in my saddlebag still, a reminder of what I'd been. Was that you? She asked. I met her eyes. Yes. Silence fell like a stone. But she didn't scream or strike me. She simply nodded once. Then you have debts to pay, she said. But not today. Today we have Silas Maddox to survive. She was right. Behind us, dust rose on the horizon. They were coming. We made camp that night in a dry wash, sheltered by red sandstone. I built a small fire while Nalin tended the horses with practiced hands. And when she returned, I gave her my larger portion of food. She split it in half and pushed the rest back. We eat equal. I take no charity. As we ate, she pulled out a bone needle and began mending the torn shoulder of my coat. Her fingers moved with the rhythm of someone who'd spent a lifetime fixing things that broke. My village was called Tall Pines, she said quietly. My father was a hunter. The soldiers came at dawn in winter '71. He fought with an old Springfield, killed one soldier before they shot him 3 times. He died looking at me. The needle flashed in firelight as she worked. They took my mother and me to Fort Stanton. 40 women in a building with no heat. My mother died that winter, not from cold, from a broken heart. She tied off the stitch. After she died, I ran, made it almost to Mexico before a bounty hunter caught me. Sold me to a trader. He sold me to another. That man sold me to Maddox. 3 times in 2 years, each time worth less. Damaged goods. By the time Maddox bought me, I cost $200. She folded the coat and set it beside me. That's what a human life is worth now, Scout. $200. I'm sorry, I said. Sorry doesn't raise the dead, but saving the living, that counts for something. She lay down on her bedroll. The law I told you about, it's true, but it's not about punishment. It's about responsibility. When a man sees a woman vulnerable, he becomes responsible for her protection. Do you understand? I do. She nodded and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing slowed to sleep's rhythm. I sat watch, feeding the fire, knowing Silas was out there in the darkness. Dawn came cold and clear. We traveled 10 miles when Nalin stiffened. Riders, 7, maybe 8. I looked back. Dust rose in the distance. Too much for casual travel. Hold tight, I said, and snapped the reins hard. The horses surged forward. Behind us, the dust cloud grew. We reached a narrow canyon with maybe 10 minutes to spare. I drove the wagon into the defile and stopped where it turned sharply. Out! Take this! I handed her one of my Colts. She checked the cylinder like she'd done it 1,000 times. Where did you learn that? I asked. My father had a Springfield. Before the soldiers came, he made sure I could use it. I positioned myself behind the wagon with my Winchester. Nalin climbed to a rock ledge 10 feet up. The first rider appeared, the nervous young outlaw from the boarding house. I let him come 5 yards, then stood. That's far enough. He jerked his reins. I fired once. The round kicked dust 2 feet in front of his horse. The animal reared. He went flying backward. Mordecai Cross came around the bend, hand flashing toward his gun. Nalin's colt barked. His hat flew off, a neat hole through the crown. Next one goes through your skull, she called down. Mordecai looked up and slowly raised his hands. Ashford, Silas's voice echoed off stone. You can't run forever. I've got 15 men. Don't need forever, I called back. Just long enough. We drove deeper into the canyon. Behind us, gunfire rang out. Warning shots. The canyon opened onto a high mesa dotted with juniper. I pushed the horses across open ground toward distant hills. We made it halfway when bullets started flying. One hit the wagon bed. Another cracked the rear wheel's wooden rim. I couldn't return fire and drive, so I focused on speed. Nalin, can you shoot while moving? Yes. I passed her the Winchester. She rolled to the wagon's back, braced against a crate, and began firing. Methodical, calm. One shot every 3 seconds. A horse screamed. A man cursed. The shooting behind us slowed. We reached the hills and drove into a narrow ravine. I stopped, checked the wheel. The rim was cracked, but holding. Maybe 10 more miles before it failed completely. Behind us, the outlaws gathered at the hill's base. I could see Silas pointing, planning. We should keep moving, Nolan said, before they decide to rush us. As I reached for the reins, my hand trembled. Just slightly, just enough. She saw it. You're thinking about the war. Always am. Some part of me. My people say, the warrior who cannot forget the battle will die in the next one. Your people were wise. They were. Before yours killed most of them. The words were hard and true as stone. No malice, just fact. We drove through the afternoon, winding through hills to a valley where a creek ran clear. We stopped to water the horses. The sun painted the western sky copper and gold. We'll camp here, I said. They won't travel after dark in unknown country. Nalin knelt by the creek, drank, then washed the dust from her face. When she stood, she turned to me. Teach me. Teach you what? To fight like you, with guns, knives, hands if necessary. Her jaw set, determined. I won't be helpless again. Teach me. So I did. For an hour as the sun sank, I taught her what 4 years of war had burned into my bones. How to reload fast. How to aim for center mass. How to move with a gun so you didn't trip. How to breathe steady when your heart hammered. She was natural. Better than natural. By darkness, she hit a man-sized target at 50 yards, 3 shots out of 5. That'll do, I said. For now. She lowered the rifle. When this is over, if we survive, I want to learn more. Why? In her eyes, I saw something I recognized from my own mirror. Because I'm tired of running. Because the next time someone tries to cage me, I want to decide what happens. I understood completely. That night we ate by the fire. For the first time, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was almost comfortable. But comfort makes you careless. The attack came at midnight. I woke to Ironclad's warning whinny, rolled from my bedroll, hand finding the Colt. Nalin was already crouched, knife in hand. How many? I whispered. 4, maybe 5. Her eyes reflected firelight. Coming from the east. They hit us like a storm. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Bullets kicked dirt, shattered rocks. I returned fire with the Winchester, dropping behind the wagon. Nalin, get down! But she wasn't retreating. She climbed onto the wagon, firing the Colt with terrifying precision. One shot, a scream, another shot, cursing. Then I saw him, Silas Maddox, circling wide through the darkness, rifle raised, aimed at Nalin. I didn't think. Threw myself forward as his gun cracked. The bullet meant for her hit me instead, punched into my left shoulder, spun me sideways. I went down hard. Through pain's red haze, I saw Nalin drop from the wagon, saw her grab the Winchester, saw her stand over me as 4 men came at us. She fired, worked the lever, fired again, calm as stone. Back off, she screamed. The next one dies. They hesitated. In that hesitation, hoofbeats thundered from the west. A new voice rang out. Drop your weapons or I'll drop you where you stand. Sheriff Esteban Hawk Cortez rode into our camp with 5 deputized ranchers, my old friend from the 7th Cavalry. I'd sent him a telegram from Los Reyes betting he'd come. He had. The firefight lasted 30 seconds. When it ended, 2 of Silas's men were dead. 3 fled into darkness. Silas himself had vanished like smoke. Esteban dismounted, saw me bleeding. Dios mio, Gideon! I've had worse, I said through gritted teeth. Nalin knelt beside me, already tearing cloth for bandages. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were fierce. You took a bullet for me, she said. Seemed like the thing to do. Foolish, she replied, but honorable. Esteban crouched beside us. We need to get him to Silver Creek. My wife can treat that wound. It's 2 hours' ride. Nalin looked at me. Can you ride? I'll ride or die trying. Then you'll ride, she said. Because you don't get to die yet. We're not finished. I woke 2 days later in a bed in Silver Creek, shoulder wrapped in clean bandages that smelled of whiskey and yarrow. Nalin sat in a chair beside me, head tilted back against the wall asleep. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She hadn't left my side. She saved your life, a voice said. Esteban stood in the doorway. Cleaned the wound, stopped the bleeding, stayed awake 48 hours to make sure the fever didn't take you. Where's Maddox? Gone. But he'll be back. Men like him always are. Esteban stepped closer. Gideon, I need to tell you something. About Nalin's village. I know, I said. Tall Pines. I was the scout who led Morrison there. She knows too. Figured it out the second day. Esteban's dark eyes held mine. And she still saved you. What does that tell you? Before I could answer, Nalin's eyes opened. She looked at me, then at Esteban. It tells me he's trying, she said quietly. 5 years ago, he quit the cavalry because of what he'd done. He spent those 5 years giving Apache families work on his ranch, protecting them from raiders, sharing his water when theirs ran dry. She stood, moved to the window. Esteban told me everything. That doesn't erase what happened at Tall Pines. But it means the man who wore that red bandana is trying to become someone better. I don't deserve your forgiveness, I said. You don't, she agreed, but you've earned something else. My respect. And for now, that's enough. A commotion outside cut our conversation short. Shouts, running footsteps. Esteban went to the window and cursed. Maddox, he's got 20 men surrounding the sheriff's office. Says if we don't hand over Nalin in 10 minutes, he'll burn the town. I tried to sit up. Pain lanced through my shoulder, but I pushed through it. Get my guns. You can barely stand, Esteban protested. Then I'll shoot sitting down. I looked at Nalin. He came for you. This ends today. It ends for both of us, she said, and there was steel in her voice. Because I'm done running too. We walked out into Silver Creek's main street together, me with a Winchester in my good hand, shoulder screaming, Nalin beside me with both Colts, Esteban and his 5 men flanking us. Silas sat on horseback in the middle of the street, 15 riders spread behind him. Mordecai Cross stood to his right, hand hovering over his silver Colt. There you are, Silas called. Thought you might hide behind women and walls, Ashford. Glad to see you still have some spine. More than you ever had, Captain. I took 3 steps forward. Antietam, September 1762. You left 43 men to die while you ran. His face darkened. I survived. That's what matters. No. How you survive is what matters. I stopped 20 feet from him. You want her? You'll have to go through me. That can be arranged, he nodded to Mordecai. The Raven here is the fastest gun in 3 territories. Let's see if the famous Iron Ashford is as fast as the stories say. Mordecai stepped forward, all in black, silver Colt gleaming. We faced each other in the street, 40 feet apart. I've killed 16 men, Mordecai said. You'll be 17. Then you better shoot straight, I replied. The street went silent. Even the wind held its breath. Mordecai's hand moved first, fast as a striking snake. But I'd been fighting since Shiloh. I'd learned to shoot while men screamed and cannons roared. I'd learned from Apache scouts who could draw and fire before you saw them move. My Colt cleared leather, fired. Mordecai's gun was only halfway up. The bullet took him in the shoulder, same place I'd been hit. He went down, gun clattering to the dust. "Next man who draws dies," I said. My voice carried across the street. "This is between me and Maddox. Rest of you, ride away or die here. Your choice." 5 of his men looked at each other. Then slowly they turned their horses and left. Then 3 more. Then 2. That left Silas and 5 loyal men. "Looks like your army's deserting, Captain," I said. "Just like you did at Antietam." Silas's face twisted with rage. He reached for his Remington. The entire town exploded. Not just Esteban and his men, but shopkeepers, ranchers, miners. 12 men stepped out of doorways with rifles. Men who'd seen Silas terrorize Apache women. Men who'd stayed silent too long. An old man named Josiah stepped forward. "Gideon Ashford gave my family food when we starved. Time to repay." A former soldier added, "And Sheriff Cortez is a good man. We stand with him." Silas looked around, outnumbered 3 to 1. His remaining men were already lowering their weapons. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is," Nalin said. She'd moved without me seeing, circled wide. Now she stood 10 feet behind Silas, Winchester aimed at his spine. "Get off the horse," she ordered. Silas turned, saw her, and for the first time fear flickered in his eyes. "You're just a woman," he said. "I'm the woman whose father you helped kill, whose mother you helped starve, whose life you tried to buy for $200. She took a step closer. "I'm the last person you'll ever underestimate. Now get down before I put a bullet through your spine." He dismounted. Esteban moved in with iron shackles. But Silas had one last trick. As the sheriff reached for him, he pulled a hidden knife from his boot and lunged. Not at me, but at Nalin. She sidestepped like a dancer. The knife passed through empty air. And then her own blade, the one she'd kept hidden all along, flashed out. She sliced across his wrist. The knife fell. My Colt was up. "Don't move." Silas froze, blood dripping from his wrist. He looked from me to Nalin and back again. "You're going to kill me," he said. "No," I replied. "You'll stand trial in Santa Fe. Answer for every woman you sold, every family you destroyed. You'll spend the rest of your life in a prison cell, knowing you failed." "That's a fate worse than death," he spat. "Good," Nalin said. "Then suffer." Esteban and his men took Silas and his crew away. The townspeople dispersed, the excitement fading. Nalin and I stood alone in the street as the sun dropped low. "It's finished," she said. "Not quite." I held out my hand. "You saved my life. Twice. I saved yours. By Apache law, we're bonded. Not by ceremony, but by shared blood and battle." She looked at my hand for a long moment, then she took it. "I can't forgive what you did at Tall Pines," she said quietly. "Maybe I never will. But I see you trying to be better. I see you standing up when you could have run. I see honor in you, Scout. And for now, that's enough." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" She looked north toward my ranch. "Now we build something. Not a marriage, not forgiveness, but a partnership. I'll help you protect the Apache families on your land. You'll teach me to survive in this world that tried to break me. We'll make something good from all this blood and pain." "A sanctuary," I said. "Yes. A place where women like me don't have to run anymore. Where they can heal. Where they can learn to fight back." She met my eyes. "Will you help me build it?" "I will." "Then we have work to do." 3 months later, my ranch in northern New Mexico had changed. A second house stood beside the main one, smaller but sturdy, Not for me and Nalin, for the 5 Apache women who'd come seeking shelter. Nalin ran it like a general ran a campaign. She taught them to read and write, to shoot, to ride, to defend themselves. They worked the ranch as equals, earning fair wages. Some stayed, some left when they were ready. All of them left stronger than they'd arrived. I watched from the main house porch one evening as Nalin taught a young girl to aim a rifle. The girl couldn't have been more than 16. She'd been found wandering near Fort Stanton, half dead from thirst and trauma. Now she was laughing as she hit a target 50 yards away. Esteban rode up, dismounted, and joined me on the porch. "You've built something good here, hermano." "We built it," I corrected. "You, me, Nalin. Even those townspeople who stood up. Still," he accepted the whiskey I poured, "it matters." We drank in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. "Got a telegram," Esteban said after a while. "Another gang's taking Apache women near Fort Bliss. Thought you might want to know." I looked at him, looked at Nalin, looked at the young women learning to shoot, to fight, to take back their lives. "I'm too old for this," I said. 47 years old with a bad shoulder and too many ghosts. "You're also the best scout I ever knew," Esteban replied. "And those women need someone." Before I could answer, Nalin walked up the porch steps. She'd heard everything. "What do you think?" I asked her. She looked at me with those dark eyes, the same eyes that had burned with fury in that boarding house 3 months ago. Now they burned with something else. Purpose? "I think we ride," she said. "I think we find those women. I think we bring them here." She looked out at the sanctuary we'd built. "And I think we do it again, and again, until there are no more women running, until there are no more Silas Maddoxes." "That could take a lifetime," I said. "Then it's a good thing we're just getting started." I stood, my shoulder aching but strong enough. "When do we leave?" "Dawn," Esteban said. Nalin nodded once. "I'll get the rifles ready." As she walked away, Esteban leaned close. "You know this won't bring back her village, won't erase what happened." "I know," I said. "But it's not about erasing the past. It's about building something better on top of its ashes. That's what soldiers do when the war finally ends. We find a new battle worth fighting. And if you die?" I thought about that. Thought about the red bandana still in my saddlebag. Thought about all the faces I'd never forget. Thought about Nalin teaching a traumatized girl to shoot, to smile, to live again. Then I'll die trying to balance the scales. That's all any of us can do. The sun touched the horizon, bleeding the sky red and gold. Somewhere out there, women were running, scared, alone. Tomorrow we'd find them. We'd bring them home. The war wasn't over. It would never be over. But now, finally, I was fighting on the right side, and that made all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like and subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Gideon's position? Would you have risked everything for a stranger? Would you have tried to make amends for past sins? These are the questions that define who we are as men. Until next time.